Body. Excuse me. All right. Five. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. We've got a lot to talk about. We've been talking about the government shutdown. That's over. But will we have that again in January? We'll have to see. There is still a pause on SNAP benefits. Wow. As we're going into Thanksgiving, when will this end? And the Epstein files. Well, it seems that they, such as they are, might be released. Finally, after nearly 2 months of waiting, Congresswoman Grijalva has finally been sworn in. She is the 218th vote, that one vote that was needed, to release the Epstein files. So tell me, what do you think? Apparently, these emails say that Trump has been, well, they mention then citizen Trump, now President Trump, many, many times. But Virginia Giuffre's book talks about a prime minister. Uh, it appears to be a prime minister that we all know. But let me just let this go, because I'm going to give this to Bronco Marketish. Brilliant, brilliant. You know, I started with you with Yesterday's Man, this wonderful book on Joe Biden. But you have been able to help us to really, really understand the Epstein files and why they are important. You know, certainly the trafficking of underage young ladies and girls, that is important. But so is political blackmail, right? So tell me about this, about these files. Why are they important and what happened today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you said, the fact that there was a prominent person who was involved in sex trafficking, particularly of underage girls, would be horrific and big news at any time, and a bit of a scandal. But I think what is significant about this particular topic is that the person who was doing those crimes was someone who was A, incredibly wealthy, and B, incredibly well connected with the political elite of the country on both sides of the aisle. So, Bill Clinton was good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He was someone who visited the White House when Bill Clinton was president, and they maintained their connection after he left the presidency. And of course, now we know that Donald Trump was not just friends with him, but seemingly very good friends with him and aware of what was going on, in terms of Epstein's operation. And that's kind of the big news of today, is that these emails were released by the House that showed that, only three were seen, but what they do appear to show is that there's acknowledgement from Epstein that Trump knew about what was going on, what he was doing, and basically, I guess either turned a blind eye to it, or who knows what else.
The fact that he knew what, and why is that significant?
I mean, in many ways, these emails are not such a bombshell, because Trump, many years ago, in a famous quote that has been repeated many times since, made clear that he knew very well that Jeffrey Epstein had a predilection for young girls. I can't quote the quote to you verbatim now, but people I'm sure have already heard it. Trump saying that Jeffrey Epstein likes women and he likes them on the youngest side. That that's well known. And of course, we had the birthday message that the Wall Street Journal put out a few months ago. That was such big news, where you have Trump talking to Epstein about a secret that they both share, and how enigmas never age. It's all this kind of very cryptic, very seedy stuff. And of course, in that book, we also see a bunch of other messages from other influential and prominent people that Epstein counted as friends, saying or making reference to the fact that he had this kind of predilection for young girls. So in this email, Epstein says very flatly to Ghislaine Maxwell, his kind of lover, friend, confidant, co-conspirator, all these things roll into one. He tells her, Trump knew about the girls. And of course, there was a revelation earlier this year where Maria Farmer, one of the accusers of Epstein, told the New York Times that one time when she was a young girl, a teen girl, she was in Epstein's office. Trump came over. She said that he kind of leered at her. And then Epstein took him away, and she could hear Epstein say to the now president, this was not for you. So all of it starts to, sorry, my headphone fell out there.
Of course.
Starts to paint a particular picture, which is that, again, at minimum, Trump was well aware that Epstein was trafficking young girls, that he was luring them with promises of all kinds of things, money, fame, career, that kind of thing. And then using that to use them for sex. And, at worst, it may be that Trump didn't just know about this and kind of allow it to happen, or sort of just turn a blind eye to it, but that maybe Trump was actually also engaging in these acts as well. That has yet to be proven, but there have been accusations before. And I think that either way, either one of those options is very bad. Obviously, one is even worse, but they are both very, very bad. They're both a very bad look for the president. Let's put it that way, to put it in an understatement.
Well, was it worth a government shutdown? Do you see a connection between the refusal to swear in now Congresswoman Grijalva to this case? Because she said that she would be that much needed one vote to open these files.
I think from what has been released today, you can see completely why the Republicans have gone to such lengths to prevent this stuff from coming out, because this is obviously so damning. Take out Donald Trump and put anyone else in there. If the most high profile sex offender probably at this point in American history, certainly recent American history, was saying about any other figure, this person knew about the girls. And we're talking about girls who were in their early teenage years, sometimes, barely in their teenage years. That would be utterly, utterly damning. That would be career ending potentially. I don't know what else is in these files. There has been some reporting. I think Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary under Obama, he's featured in them in an embarrassing way. But this shows you, I think this really shows you why they have gone a great lengths to keep this out, because clearly the president knew about this sex trafficking operation and did nothing about it.
Why do you think this happened now? These files have been around for some time. Were the Democrats trying to give Jeffrey Epstein cover? Or, is this political vindictiveness? Would you ascribe any motives to this revelation now?
Yeah, if the question is why, after all these years, it's only now becoming this nationwide scandal, I think there's a number of different...
I only ask that because Democrats and Republicans are named in this, and political figures just from all across the spectrum. It's been intimated, and they've been named as having visited the mansion. So not everybody, but a lot of people have been involved.
Yeah, I think if we're asking why, after all these years, the files are only now becoming this nationwide scandal that's kind of drawing headlines in every mainstream news organization, I think there's several reasons for that. Number one, as you allude to there, Jeffrey Epstein had connections across the political aisle. Like I said, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, a man who, by the way, just last year was still invited, despite his public knowledge about his involvement with Epstein being, at this point, maybe a decade old. he was still invited to speak at the DNC, given a prominent speaking slot in the DNC. So this was someone that the Democratic Party did not want to clearly sever ties with, did not want to remove as the kind of public face of the political party, despite Clinton's many scandals. So I think that gives you an idea. He wasn't the only Democrat who was involved with Epstein, but certainly the most prominent one. I think there are a few other reasons why. I mean, look, Epstein was a very powerful figure who was well connected, and because of his wealth, because of his ability to ingratiate himself with a lot of influential people, he was, despite being convicted not of child sex trafficking, they used the prostitution charge to get him, but nevertheless, because he was able to keep this thing under wraps. He was a registered sex offender, and yet for years and years and years, he still continued to hobnob with the world's powerful, because I think his resources were able to guarantee him continued influence and a lack of scrutiny from the law, from the political class, from the press. This really came about partly because of Trump's labor secretary nominee, who let slip that he had given Epstein basically lenient treatment when he was a prosecutor in Florida. It partly came out because of the Miami Herald and Julie K. Brown's reporting on this, which kind of exploded the issue and led to Epstein's rearrest under Trump. I think Epstein's suicide has also, or whatever you want to say, but certainly his death has also contributed to that. And then finally, I mean, ironically, the last piece of the puzzle here, the reason why it's become such flashpoint, is that Trump, quite mystifyingly, and now in hindsight you can say maybe stupidly, promised his supporters, who were very much obsessed with this case and quite rightly disgusted by it, he promised them that he would release the files. He said it multiple times during the campaign, and then once the time came to actually release them, Trump and his administration, of course, did everything possible to try and avoid releasing them, and did this very public and very embarrassing U-turn on it, which has obviously inflamed a lot of anger, not among all of his supporters. A lot of them have just meekly accepted it, but there have been a lot of people who have said, well, hold on, you said that you were going to release all this stuff. Suddenly you won't, and then suddenly it also turns out that you were good friends with this guy and seemed to be kind of in on what he was doing. So all of that, I think, yes, there's always politics to this, but obviously there's also a real, matter of public interest in Epstein and his files and what the president knew about them.
Why should the public care about this? I mean, certainly you have people who are very well known, people who are powerful, but in your estimation, given your examination of this case, why do you believe that people should be interested in this?
I mean, number one, at its most base level, we're talking about the trafficking and the abuse of maybe thousands of young girls. We will maybe never really know the true number. But that alone makes Jeffrey Epstein one of the most prolific sex offenders in history. And the reason why he was able to get away with this, I mean, this was a sprawling operation that, from what we know, involved, sometimes girls being recruited from overseas, The reason he was able to get away with this is because his extreme wealth, his political connections to figures from both political parties allowed him to get away with that. So it's the fact that American politics unfortunately become so money laden and so corrupt over the last some decades that the sort of decay of the political system in the United States that allowed this man to carry out these terrible crimes. And by the way, terrible crimes that were visited upon, not that it really changes the morality of it, but he was preying on often very poor girls from poor families, using his wealth. So it's a combination of the corruption of the political system and the gross inequality that has come to be in United States society, wealth inequality, and the way that people who have extreme wealth, like Epstein, extreme wealth that we have allowed them to hoard, that they're able to use this for very unseemly ends. I think the second part of it, and that's the part that's kind of going a little bit under the radar, is that more and more evidence has come forward that what was initially alleged about Epstein may well be true, which is that he was an asset, a foreign intelligence asset, and specifically a foreign intelligence asset of the Israeli government. And the best reporting on this recently has been done by Dropsite News, which I would encourage anyone who is interested in this topic to go and read. In fact, just the other day, they had a major story about Israeli spies' connections to Epstein and how he stayed with them. And that was just the latest of a number of stories that shows the connections. So that I think is the other thing that is a major story here. And it's probably getting a little bit of a short thrift in terms of mainstream coverage right now.
But let me ask you about that, because that is something that no one really wants to touch in corporate media. Why is that significant? That he, because indeed, the Trump cabinet secretary did say that when he was in law enforcement in Florida, well, I was told not to touch him, even though they caught him engaging in pederasty, really. And he was allowed just to sleep in the jail and wander and just live his life. Wow. Help me to understand why that aspect, the political aspect, is something that no one wants to touch. And in Virginia Giuffre's book, of course, she mentions a prime minister who many believe is from that particular country.
Yeah, people believe that's Ehud Barak, who was known to be an associate of Epstein's. There's actually emails between the two of them. Barak was also photographed. This is long after Epstein had been, convicted and served his time and registered as a sex offender. Barak was photographed going into his house, covering his face, his penthouse in New York. Why does no one want to touch this? I mean, I think it's for the same reason that for 2 years, much of the political class in this country gave the Israeli government this extraordinary carte blanche to carry out just a spree of murder and human rights atrocities in Gaza in a way that did not happen in any other era. Even Ronald Reagan was appalled by Israel's conduct in the war in Lebanon, and basically ended that war with a phone call. And yet, for whatever reason, our political class cannot touch that. It is a reflection of the way that the Israeli government has very successfully maneuvered, to stifle dissent within the United States. We can see that in the way that what was the first kind of target of repression of this administration when it came in. It was people who were critics of Israel, who were immigrants, even a green card holder. They were the very first people that were targeted, and that shows you the level of influence that Israel's managed to amass. And people like Epstein were very likely, an instrument of that influence. Someone who was very wealthy, who was able to use his connections, who was able to use potentially some of his crimes, some of the things that he was alleged to have done, as a way to compromise politicians. That might sound on the top and maybe crazy and conspiratorial, but there is substantial evidence that is in fact what he was doing.
But does it sound conspiratorial? I mean, and what would he use his influence to do or to have done?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does sound conspiratorial, but I would also say that it's important to note that conspiracies are real. I mean, there's been many conspiracies in American history that have proven true. Watergate was a conspiracy. MK Ultra was a conspiracy.
Until it wasn't.
The conspiracy is a real crime. It's a crime that is chargeable in the United States criminal justice system because conspiracies always exist. There are some that are more outlandish and have less evidence or maybe completely fraudulent, but there are also some that are very much real. In terms of the Epstein and his possible role in Israeli intelligence, I mean, a few things that we know. We know for a fact because U.S. officials, U.S. intelligence people have for years complained about the fact that the Israeli government, conducts very aggressive surveillance and espionage against the United States. And what I mean by that is not just spying on sometimes lawmakers and other U.S. officials, but when U.S. officials visit Israel, even on official trips, they will say that they get offers from the Israeli government, to send over women, drugs, that kind of thing, that they know that they're being spied on, that anytime a U.S. Official goes over there, they have very strict instructions around what they can do because they should know that they're basically always being watched. So this kind of use of potential compromising information, blackmail, that has been that's a known part of the way that the Israeli government and Israeli intelligence operate. Another thing we know is that Epstein, by a number of his accusers, has been accused of spying on some of the wealthy and influential people that he allegedly has, fed some of his victims to. Maria Farmer, again, the accuser that I mentioned a little bit ago, she said that, in his house, he had secret rooms where there were, cameras that were connected to his various rooms. They were fed back into a computer screen, and they were used for watching and recording whatever was happening. When some of the evidence that Trump and the Trump administration will not release includes stacks and stacks of CDs that were seized from his Palm Beach, and I think actually his Manhattan penthouse too, which, they have said, well, this has images and everything of abuse. We don't want to harm the victims. That is completely fair enough. But it makes you realize, what exactly was being filmed or recorded, and what was he storing, and for what purpose. But we know that all exists. So the thing that people have alleged is that this was indeed being used as as a way to blackmail prominent, famous people to do what Epstein wanted. And by the way, we know that that's what he did. We don't have yet instances where he may have, people have come forward and said he used the fact that I slept with an underage girl against him. But certainly we know for a fact that he at one point tried to kind of use his knowledge of Bill Gates' affair with a woman to get money out of him. That's one example. Just in this email release that we just saw today, there's one email where Michael Wolff, who people may remember, he wrote the Fire and Fury book. He's advising Epstein in 2015 on what he should and shouldn't say now that Trump is running for president. Epstein is wondering, how he can navigate that difficulty with the media. And Wolff tells him, well, look, if he ends up winning, maybe you can use what you do know as a way, and the fact that you've kept silent as a form of goodwill to get something out of the next administration. So right there, we have two examples where, Epstein was using or contemplated using his knowledge of things for political influence. So when you take these three things just here that I've laid out, it's not hard to imagine, if given that we know that Epstein was doing all kinds of things for the Israeli government. Again, Drop Site News, I would recommend people go and read this series of stories. It would not be
Well,
surprising if these things were then used as part of that help for the Israeli government as well.
well, what would the Israeli government want Bill Clinton and these other, particularly American officials or people of influence to do?
Well, as one example, Bill Clinton. There's a reported story of when Clinton was president, and he was presiding over the Oslo negotiations. Basically, Netanyahu, who wasn't happy with what was going on, happened to get word.
Well, just to remind people, the two-state solution. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And Netanyahu, who was unhappy with, perhaps being pushed to give up more than he wanted, just happened to mention to Clinton offhandedly, hey, by the way, we know about the fact that, you had an affair with your intern, but don't worry, we won't mention that. We're going to keep mum. I'll keep mum about that. I won't put that out publicly. Your secret is safe with me, which, on the surface, isn't that a very nice thing? This guy is offering to help his fellow world leader to not be embarrassed in the press. I mean, if you look at it with even the slightest bit of cynicism, knowing that Netanyahu is a great manipulator, a great political operator, this more comes across as a sort of mafia-like threat. Hey, don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. I will make sure of it. Your secret's safe with me. This isn't going to come out. Of course, the implication being it won't come out as long as you do what you want me to do. That is, given Israel's reliance on the U.S. for not just continuing to kind of dominate the Palestinians and to steal their land, but on the massive amount of military aid that it receives from the United States, which enables it to do things like not just the horrors that we saw in Gaza, but the series of wars that are launched around the region, which it could not do without U.S. support. It's very easy to see what Israel might require, what they might use someone like Epstein and the information he has for.
How do you think that this would have potential to change or to shift American public opinion about the files about Israel, even?
I think public opinion in the United States towards Israel has already been severely damaged. Israel's standing in the United States and most of the rest of the world has, with completely free of anything that may or may not come out about its relationship with Epstein, its actions and conduct alone over the past 2 years has been very, very damaging to it. But of course, I think, yes, if the American public were to learn that, the Israeli government was potentially blackmailing or otherwise threatening its lawmakers with all kinds of information in order to try and meddle in its politics, that would be even more severe. I mean, think about the fact that the Russian government's, meddling in the 2016 election, that was a years-long scandal and outrage among a number of people in the United States. You can only imagine what it would be, if this came to pass. And I mean, and by the way, we do know already that Israel has meddled in American politics many, many times. Not in this way that we're talking about with Epstein, but whether through using kind of proxies like AIPAC as a way to kind of threaten and cajole lawmakers, or in the case of when the Iran deal was being passed under Obama, spying on lawmakers and then feeding information to Republicans, its political allies, as a way to try and derail that deal from being signed. So we already know that this is happening. But I think if this came forward, because it's such a combustible charged set of allegations, I think, and the fact that the public is now really paying attention to it, I think it would have a lot bigger impact than some of these stories, these earlier stories that I just mentioned.
Branko Marketish, before you go, what do you think we should look out for?
I think it sounds like news outlets are already putting out reporting about some of these latest email disclosures, I think we should look out for, if there's going to be a vote in the House on whether these files are actually going to finally get released. And if there is a vote, I think we should look at who is supporting it and who isn't, who is putting roadblocks in front of this stuff from reaching the public, so that we know exactly who was involved, who was potentially helping Epstein or even engaging in these crimes. I think all of that is going to be important to keep an eye on.
Branko Marketich, thank you for your work, and we will keep a lookout for Drop Site News. But you and your work, it has been illuminating, and I think we should pay attention. We should pay attention and get out your popcorn for the news tonight, because I think it's going to be interesting. But I think this is, at least before we go, independent media, what role have they played in this? Because corporate media still won't touch what you've given to us.
I mean, I think that there has been some good mainstream reporting now. The part of the trouble is that I think the skepticism is a good thing with journalism. You have to be skeptical. I think sometimes there is a hesitancy to touch things that could be viewed as, giving oxygen to, made up conspiracy theories and things that are just kind of like flights of fancy. And I think it took a long time for the mainstream news to really pick up the story, whereas independent media, which does not have a lot of the same fears about, losing access, for instance, to powerful people, or, that is willing to kind of not as constrained by the worries of seeming to be, radical or what have you. I think that they've been on the story for a long time. I mean, I remember when I first learned of the story, it was all the way back in back when Gawker was a media outlet, before it was destroyed by Peter Thiel. So, and again, Drop Site has been doing really great reporting on the Israel connection here, and they are a fully independent news outlet that actually is being sued right now for some of its reporting by people who are very litigious and want to try and stifle the news using lawsuits and the like.
Branko Marketich, get his book, Yesterday's Man. It is such a fascinating view of Joe Biden. I think we should understand that. It helps us to understand where we've been over the past 50 years or so. But follow him right now. You carry us forward too. Branko, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Santita.
Absolutely. When I saw this story, I thought of you. I said, hey, let me reach out. I'm so glad you're able to give us some time today. Blessings to you.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Sheila Garland, Olana Ron, how are you?
Santita, my sister, how are you?
Oh, I am doing well. Well, all things considered, we see that Snap is still paused. I got about 20 minutes left here.
Yeah.
Help me to understand why it's paused and the impact that is having. Because people already, fortunately, some states have been trying to fill in the gaps, which is, thank goodness for that, but it's still not enough.
It's not enough. And people have been trying to take on, I think that, I know we look at the sort of the legalese, the legal things that are going on, but it seems to me that every move that this administration makes is generating a type of unity across communities where we're beginning to look out for each other. I'm I'm looking at how people are responding to ICE, to all the things. And people in communities that you've never spoken to, we're, talking to each other. People are connecting to one another. And so, you're seeing these projects of survival that are cropping up all over the place. People are putting up pantries, passing food out in order to fill the gap, which is a lot of what we've done historically in this country, because let's face it, this government has not always historically been on top of guaranteeing that people did not fall through the cracks. I mean, it was 1935 before we got the passage of, all of this Great Society kind of stuff under Roosevelt, with Frances Perkins as the, first woman cabinet member of the Department of Labor. So,
and of course, Mary McLeod Bethune.
Yeah, let's not forget Mary McLeod Bethune. Yeah, I had a chance to walk on the campus of
Bethune-Cookman
down in Florida a decade or more ago. But I think that, from my understanding, I'm certainly not a lawyer, but from my understanding, I guess Ketanji Brown oversees what was it, the U.S. Court of Appeals, the First Circuit. And so her decision to allow them to reconvene, I think, was probably the best option, because otherwise she would have to demand a convening of it's a procedural, is what she's saying. Otherwise, it would have to go back to the entire Supreme Court, would have most likely ruled in Trump's favor, to do what he wanted to do, which was not make the payments. So, I think that she was between a rock and a hard place, as people are criticizing her. But as I'm getting more and more into reading why she made the decision, again, like I said, I'm no lawyer, but it would seem to me that with the emergency funds that were set aside and all of those things, the machinations that the Trump administration is going through to avoid paying the SNAP benefits is horrific for families that are facing hunger. And the money that, what is that? That's almost the same amount of money that he's trying to send to Argentina. So,
No, Argentina in one fell swoop, he's trying to send them $20 billion.
$20 billion.
And you know what? As I've been doing a deep dive on that, Argentina did what we're trying to force, what our government, this present government, is trying to force Venezuela to do, which is to privatize their vast resources so that our corporations can go in, and not just the United States, but the West.
Put it up everywhere.
UK, all of that. They're always at the center of so much, even with a smile and a lovely royal family. What they're doing is, and it really bankrupted the country. Right? So they're getting basically a Wall Street bailout, not from our government, from us.
Right. From us.
From us. So it could be, if it's either 20 or $40 billion. There's a $5 billion shortfall in that fund.
Yeah.
It's
How
do they? But help me to understand. You're from the Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah.
Help me to understand how they justify that. What? That makes sense to me.
Honestly, Santita, there is no justification. I think history is going to look back on this moment, and as we move past this moment, people are going to look back on this and see this, hopefully, as an eye-opening experience that, there are 140 million, almost half the population of this country, and growing, are poor and low income. We've got to take matters into our own hands at some point and say, enough is enough. We know how to govern ourselves. When you look around the communities and see what people are doing in order to survive, we have a lot of ideas about survival and what we need to do. And some of us, many of us are falling through the cracks, sure enough, but I'm really focused on those things that involve getting connected with one another in our communities and across the city and across the country. But I think that there's no rhyme or reason to what Trump is doing. He's crapping on poor people. He's crapping on working people. He's crapping on the people that voted and supported him. He's crapping on, all the people who said that this is the kind of administration that we need, that this is what we need, somebody who's a hard-hitting businessman. This is not a business. This is people's lives. Things that contribute to the well-being of society. This is not run like a business. This needs to be run with making sure people have what they need: education, housing, heat, electricity, food. These are all the things that we need in order to be, quote unquote, a civilized society. And clearly this administration and many others before have not held this opinion. And, we can get into a deeper discussion about the political economy and why this is so. And I always talk about coming from Flint, Michigan, because it's a real window into where we're headed. My city went from 100,000 auto workers to less than 10,000. And in my adult lifetime, And so the shift has been absolutely tremendous, and there has been no effort to really, or very little effort on the part of the federal or the state government to figure out how to bail people out who are just dangling by a thread. So I think this is deliberate. I think this is part and parcel of what we've seen from this economic system. And I think we're going to see more of the same. And until our backs are up against the wall and we understand that we have to take matters, our futures, the future of our children, our grandchildren, into our own hands, I think we're going to see more of the same. And honestly, I might be out of order for saying this, and many of your listeners might completely disagree, but I think now is the time to start talking about some form of political independence, because I think if we're organized, see, here's the thing, it's kind of like all the silos that we tend to organize in, right? We organize in silos. And so now we're organizing around restoring food SNAP benefits, organized around, this thing and that thing. But what is the core thing that's generating these moves on the part of the political representatives of this economic system? Because they can't, they could, but they will not deliver the kind of government, the kind of society that our people need. And as a result, I think we have to look for other ways from amongst ourselves in order to address those issues. Whether they restore the food stamps or not, there are still going to be hungry people, because for an adult, what is it, like $188 a month?
But let me ask you this, because in keeping with that thought, I think that Americans have moved toward independence. I don't think that people are not running to the Democratic Party in New York. They were running to Mamdani.
That was amazing. Oh my God.
But they weren't running.
Yeah.
They were running to Senator Fate in Minneapolis. He's not gotten the credit that he deserved. Because he took a hit. He won the nomination. They have a caucus, and then the party withdrew. They extended the nomination. They don't want to talk about him.
Right.
And he did. He launched one heck of a bid, and his work as a state senator is responsible. It has been reported for shifting the numbers on people who attend college. The percentage of people who are attending college in Minnesota, that's gone up. Because he's made access to higher education infinitely more affordable.
Exactly.
And so I'm thinking that, because this is to be transpartisan, right? How do you? This is not a party thing. This is. The corporate media always trying to make this a black thing.
Right.
Now, you're on TikTok, you see white women who were the majority of the recipients anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we are seeing evidence of, people thinking and moving and acting and using whatever, we have at our disposal under the current conditions, using that in order to say, listen, we do need something independent from what we've been getting from the Democrats and Republicans. And you're right, Mamdani, certainly. Whether he's going to be able to govern, much like what we've seen with Brandon, we're up against the every aspect of this capitalist economy, that really does not deliver and will not deliver, and will do everything to block any sort of progress for working people in totality. And I think Mamdani is going to face similar. But the thing that's really heartening for me are the number of people that were willing to come out, volunteer. More people voted in that New York City mayoral election than have voted in the past 50 years.
69.
I know.
Just when it says Dr. King, just after he was killed.
Yeah.
So, help me, but and I think that one of the things that we could learn from what Mayor Johnson is enduring, and we should have learned it with Lori Lightfoot. The voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
that's when you have to get to work.
And I think that that's part of the I'm going to push back a little bit. I think obviously we have to say that because we're engaged in the political system structures as they are. Agreed. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But we have to engage with what's in front of us now. But I also think that we have to learn how to walk on 2 feet. So we have to not only engage in what's in front of us, because that's where people are struggling, that's where people are connecting. And, that has been an historical way for us to sort of have our voices heard and do some transformative things, right? On the one hand. But on the other hand, I think the political times are definitely different from anything that I understand in history. I feel like we're at a point where the productive forces are going in a direction that's making a lot of the workers out there superfluous. And the kinds that we have such a growing underground economy where people are earning money in ways, that we never would have considered possible. People are not engaged with work in the same way that we were in the factories and the stores and this, because they're gone.
Well, COVID took that out.
Well, COVID took it.
And then the government gave they wiped out the big businesses. That's why the shutdown to me was very dangerous.
It was
because they wiped out small businesses.
Yeah.
And now if you are engaged in a small business, you get a call from Amazon.
Yeah.
Because they do not want you to be independent.
Yeah, not at all. But the other part of it is the nature of capitalism has to gobble up everything. It has to monopolize, essentially cannibalize everything. So we've got the cannibalization of so many industries that we see in this period of real economic, it's a turmoil that's not solvable under the current sort of political setup that we have. And that's why I keep bringing up this idea of political independence. We really need to think about what does it mean to be politically independent and how do we begin to build something out of that.
But
and
you know what?
Think about when your dad ran, that was the whole idea
that was
political independence, really.
But let me just say this, and Dr. King, the whole idea was to be politically independent. If you had to work with a party, Abby Phillips has a book out now on CNN, from CNN, and it's about Reverend Jackson. I'm going to interview her. And what's interesting is she takes you through his interactions with both parties. And as they're putting these packages on CNN and on other shows about him, you saw how he said, wait a minute. I don't trust the Democrats. I don't trust the Republicans. Cut us in or cut it out. What we're going to do, we're going to work with whomever we need to work to achieve our goals. Now, the Democrats have now tried to put him in a headlock. No. And I let them know, no, because we had to run against you.
Yeah.
Because you did not want him. And you still really don't want him. If you don't want Omar Fateh, you don't want Jesse Jackson. Then you don't want the people. Because we saw the Democratic establishment, the people voted for Mamdani. They voted the caucus, the system that they have up in Minneapolis. Okay, he won, but you said no
and withdrew.
Come on, which is part of the reason that we're in the mess that we're in. When it's not 42 million people. You know this better than anybody. You're from the Poor People's Campaign. You do the numbers. It's 42 million people and their dependents.
Let's be real.
Let's
be real.
Sheila, what does that look like? I know I got like 5 minutes here. You just say whatever you need to say, because the numbers to me
are
mind-boggling.
Right. And I think the reality is that those numbers are going to continue to grow. That's the sad part about it. And Santita, we have, unfortunately, and to some extent, I think to sort of go a little bit deeper than maybe I should go, but I think that we're going to take a lot more hits. This is a huge hit. And I think that we're going to take a lot more hits in terms of losses and what are we able to get back. I'm thinking I had a nightmare. I probably shouldn't know. I had a nightmare about Oprah Winfrey and, the damage that her connection with Bill Clinton and the narrative around how people were getting public assistance was done in order to eliminate that program, Title 4A, and the role that she played. And, so I think we have to get smarter. Hopefully we can learn through every process that we go through, or through the turmoil that we go through, and that we begin to learn something. But I will tell you this, I'm reminded, I don't know if people have ever heard of General Gordon Baker. General Baker was a big a leader in Detroit. And there's a lot of stuff that's been written about him, but he said, we thought that we were leading something. They were fighting on the auto floors. They were fighting the union leadership. They were fighting the auto owners, everybody. And when the Detroit rebellions broke out, they thought that they were in the leadership of that community, what was going to happen. And the reality is that he said that it was all we could do just to keep up. We were sort of chasing behind. And so we do have some time to prepare. Because even as we're in the middle of things, if we're not really educating ourselves and learning about what our history is and what's possible, I mean, look, I'm going to say this. I think we have the technology where we can essentially build a house in 45 minutes. Why do we have homelessness? We have the technology to point the clouds toward crops and put water on it. I mean, essentially 8% of the land in California can produce enough food to feed the entire world. Why is there hunger? The issue is distribution. The systems of distribution are not geared toward the majority. It's geared toward a handful of billionaires who run our system, and they're going to use that system to continue to enrich themselves. We have to figure out how to unite. We have to see ourselves as having some power amongst ourselves and not giving it all over to the handful of billionaires and soon to be a trillionaire. Is that Musk is about to be a trillionaire? Anyway.
Well, yeah, but all these people, I mean, look, we already have trillionaires. The Rothschilds are trillionaires. The royal family.
Are they trillionaires? I thought they were still billionaires.
No, there's a book, Who Owns the World, by an Irish Republican.
Okay.
They are the only family who own whole countries. The only people. And see, anytime the wealthiest people downplay their wealth, the poorest people play it up.
Yeah.
So I literally have a minute. What do you want us to know? The Poor People's Campaign. Well,
yes.
Magnificent work.
Yeah, I want to make sure look for the Illinois Poor People's Campaign. Look for our website. You can find us. We have statewide calls. We're organizing, believe it or not, in the state of Illinois. There is a commission called the Commission to End Poverty. In the state of Illinois. And so the Illinois Poor People's Campaign has been engaging with that commission and really challenging it to say, okay, let's talk about, we don't want to be run in circles. We want to see real evidence that you are making moves to end poverty. And, people have a lot of things to say politically about what Pritzker and all these folks are doing. But if you have a commission set up that's designed to end poverty in Illinois, well, then let's do it. Let's make it so. And so that's one of the key things that the Illinois Poor People's Campaign is working on. Another thing that we're going to be looking at is how do we really start trying to join up the various struggles that working people are engaging in, whether it be around the ICE raids, whether it be around the issue of SNAP benefits, whether it be around, issues of homelessness. How do we begin to unite these various struggles? Because we're all fighting for the same thing. How do we have a dignified society and a way of life so that, people are not left to struggle on their own. 140 million plus poor people in this country means this is not individual failing. This is systemic.
That's right.
We have to begin to look at it as a systemic failure. And so we invite people. We'll be having our statewide call, I believe December 10th, but go to our website, the Illinois.
But that's in Illinois, but you have them all over the country.
We have. So
I would encourage people to look at Poor People's Campaign wherever you are.
Wherever you are in your state.
Right.
And I know that at the national level, there's some shifting that's going on. So we're waiting to hear what that's going to look like. But in the meantime, if you're in Minnesota, if you're in Wisconsin or New York or wherever you may be, there is a Poor People's Campaign that you can connect with, and make sure you do, because it's one of the few campaigns, one of the few entities that did organize across the country, and that we had unified campaigns that united the states and communities within those states. And it was a very powerful process. And we learned a lot.
Well, absolutely. And this was Dr. King's last campaign, and everyone was moving to have a sit-in. a live-in, if you will,
Mhm.
on the mall. And Reverend was the mayor of
He
Resurrection.
was the mayor of Resurrection City.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I invite you to come to the Operation Push Saturday Morning Forum, because Push has traditionally been, and we've tried to be an umbrella organization so that the Poor People's Campaign and everybody
Yeah.
be under one tent, because all of these issues are connected. And when
Very
we connect to each other, boy, we can win. I
Right.
love you, Sheila Garland
Love
Olatunran.
you
We
too,
are going to
Santita.
talk about the South, the L. Brent Bozell. Who is he? He is a conservative commentator and thought leader who has been nominated to be the ambassador to South Africa. But guess what? He won't tell the senators if he believes that Black people should vote, or if we
Oh,
should have equal rights, or
oh,
if he agrees with the policy to bring in white Afrikaners while excluding everybody else. Let's talk about it, everybody. Oh, yeah. You
man.
can't make this up. We're going to have Michael Brown from Electronic Intifada coming right now.
Me,
Much
I'm
to
sorry.
my
Okay. Love you, Santita. I got a dash.
AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.